Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm the Big Buckarama, and today we're going to be doing yet another IEM review. Today we'll be looking at the Kefine Delci Angel Ears edition. This is effectively a 2.0 remix of the original Kefine Delci that adds to the mix a set of custom tuning nozzles. The packaging for the Delci is your typical Chi-Fi packaging. It is a cardboard box and sleeve with a little bit of a nice little silver leafing there, the Kefine logo. And on the top of the box is some closed cell foam to hold the IM, and at the bottom there is a carrying pouch. I do want to spend a little bit of extra time talking about the carrying pouch because I genuinely believe that this is possibly one of the best carrying pouches that is currently available on the market. The size and shape and pocketability of this carrying pouch is absolutely excellent. Size-wise, if we compare it to the Simgot carrying pouch here, you can see that it's a little bit smaller. More importantly, it is significantly thinner. Thickness-wise, it's about the same size as the Artie and Let Sure style cases, but you can see that it is thinner in its width, which makes it a lot more pocketable. And the size and shape of this for inside the pocket is just absolutely perfect. One thing I do like about this case a lot is that the pull tab on the zipper is a soft, flexible rubber. The metal portion actually only comes up to about there in the zipper, which means that this is in your pocket. It's not going to be poking you in the side. Unlike the Artie one here, that has a very stiff plastic coated metal zip. It's very uncomfortable in the pocket. It will stick out and poke you. And on the Simgot, the zipper is just a full metal tab that it folds fairly close to it, and it's kind of got that nice little convex shape there, so it kind of contours a bit, but it will poke sideways and will kind of jab you in the thigh or stick out of your pocket or something. So I don't really like that. Another feature I really like about this, aside from its general durability, is that on the inside it has a nice velour fabric coating, and it has this nice full-length elastic pocket, which you can see is a perfect size fit for the large dry and dry silica gel desiccant packs that I run in almost all of my IEM cases to help keep them dry. And inside the Artie/Let Sure case, they run a very similar pouch in there, and that works also great for the same thing. However, in a lot of things like the Simgot case, and this is a few other cases have this as well, they only put the mesh on this one side, and it doesn't really hold on to those desiccant packs very well. Whereas this holds on to it great, fits perfectly. Included with your little accessory pack here is 3 sets of ear tips, or actually 6 sets of ear tips when I get real technical about it. Small, medium, and large in a standard medium rubber ball style tip. These are pretty standard medium style tips, nothing really too fancy. I think we've all had this style of tip at some point before. They're perfectly serviceable. I have nothing wrong with them. I think they're perfectly fine to use. And also included with it is we have these tips here, which basically look and feel like kind of like the KB Ear 08 style ear tips. I'm a big fan of the KB Ear 07 ear tips. I have quite a few of these that I use on a lot of different IMs. These are very, very neutral and very comfortable, so I really use them a lot. And I like the 08 ear tips. I have a few sets of those as well. But specifically as it comes to the Delci AE, I don't think these are really a good fit. And I mean that in the most literal sense of the word. These tuning nozzles are what I like to refer to as a bottle cap style. It's very similar to the tuning nozzles that you see on the MP145 here. And these make the lip that the IEM has to fit over thicker. And with this kind of medium hard center core inside of the tips, it becomes very, very difficult to get it to stretch over that tip. Now, I'm kind of making this look easier than it really is just because I have fairly strong fingers and can force it on there. But you can see that the nozzle is a bit distorted in the barrel already, and it just doesn't, it either feels like it's stuck on there too tight, or it just doesn't feel like it's stuck on enough and it slips off really easy. It's not a very good fit. The standard tips seem to actually, in my opinion, fit much better. You see how easy that went on? That was nothing. You can see it's not distorting the nozzle or doing anything. For myself personally, I'm running these are very soft silicone rubber tip. I believe these are the tips that came with my Zigat Chino. But in general, if I peel this back and you look at it, you can see that this is not struggling to be on that tip. Let me actually get a little bit more light here, a little bit better backlighting. You can see it's not struggling to be on the tip. It actually fits on there quite nicely and isn't really interfering with anything in any way. So definitely I would highly recommend using some different tips. I mean, these are great tips to have, these KB Hero 8 tips. Just know that they don't fit very well on this nozzle. In terms of the nozzles, like I said, are the standard like Coke bottle cap style nozzles. And the silver nozzle is very, very similar to the stock Delci tuning, whereas the gold nozzles that I have on here, these are the angel ear tuning nozzles, which add a significant amount of kind of 3D space to the IEM, really improve the soundstage and the layering. I do wish that there was a different mechanism to store these. They just kind of put them in a little, dime bag kind of thing. I wish that they would have included kind of like this little makeup compact sample case, kind of like Hi-Diz does with the MP145 and MP143. I think that'd be better. I'm sure I could probably buy some of these, like a pack of 5,000 of them from somewhere for $2 if I really wanted to, but I just don't like these just kind of being free, or putting them in a baggie and storing them in a baggie. They'll get lost. It's the only downside to not having just a straight tuning nozzle. But overall, I think the accessory package is excellent, and this case is one of my favorite cases for a budget IEM, and I use this case. I've got a couple of these I use all the time. The only thing that I do not like about this case here is this. This Kefine logo is painted on, and I would be a lot happier if this was silver leafed on, just like they did on the box. Because if that was silver like that, that'd be awesome. So if you ever watch this Kefine, make that silver leafed. Moving on to the actual IEM itself, the build quality on this is an all metal shell. Excellent, excellent comfort. I have worn these and fallen asleep with them and woken up and forgot that they were even in my ear. The silver kind of look on here, I think this is a bare metal with like a clear coat over the top of it. It looks very good. The Kefine logo on the front of the IEM is painted, and it does come with a little plastic beauty cover to protect it in shipping. As you can see, the 2-pin with the included cable is a perfect match to the color of the IEM. The back side of the IEM, where it actually fits into the inner portion of the ear, has a nice smooth slope to it. Very, very comfortable. Really enjoy this shaping on the IEM. Overall, the size is not too much different in size and shape to what you would expect with the typical Simgot ear size with IEM. Very, very similar in the size and the shape of those. And again, you kind of see the Simgot kind of has this weird little bump on the back of it, whereas this, like I said, is a nice smooth transition into the ear. A couple of small vents on the back. There's no driver flex or anything like that I've noticed. Ian Fan will also be very, very happy to see that they have included L and R labeling on both the 2-pin and on the IEM itself. So if you're really, really super confused, you can find it really, really super easy. Hopefully Ian, if he does buy a pair of Delci AEs, will be able to plug the cable in first try. The only other thing to really note in terms of the design is there's a little bit of an angel ears logo here, kind of silkscreen printed onto the top of the IEM. The cable is a 4.4 millimeter cable straight out of the box. There is an option for both a 4.4 and a 3.5. As you can see on the box here, I did buy the 4.4 millimeter version. Quality of this cable is quite good. It's not the best cable, but it is, I think it's an 8-core cable with a 2 twisted pair for the primary cable lead. All the hardware on it is aluminum. So you have the Kefine logo there, decent strain relief, a little bit of knurled texture there at the end of it. And up here on the Y-split, we do have a little bit of the Delci branding. And again, like I said, the colorway matching of the IEM to the cable is absolutely excellent. And I will not be replacing this cable. It is perfectly serviceable. I did do a little bit of cable rolling on it. Didn't notice that any higher or lower impedance cables made much of a damn bit of difference as far as the tonality did. Maybe a little bit better handling of the cable, but I mean, let's just be honest. Like, this cable looks sick with these IEMs. They should be connected to it at all times for every reason. Tonality wise, I really like these IEMs. Kind of a TLDR of these. These will be my new recommended IEM under the $100 price point. This is what I wish the EW300 would have been like. I really think that this is a fantastic option for a very versatile IEM. And I don't think it's fair to just kind of like look at this IEM by itself. I think you kind of need to have a little bit of perspective with it. That being the EA500LM from here from Simgot, and of course my preferred recommendation for the EW300, which is the Tangzu Fudu. And this really kind of is, I think, the Goldilocks IEM of the two of these. You have the two tuning nozzle options on here, and we'll look at those in the graphs here in just a moment. But the nice thing about this is the silver nozzle, which follows the standard kind of warm Delci OG tuning, kind of slots it in between, you know, the Fudu and the Delci, or the Delci AE. And when you look at the Angel Ears tuning nozzle, it kind of slots it in between the Delci and the EA500LM. So, you know, you've really got this versatile IEM that can kind of lean both ways in terms of tuning and tonality, and will give you a lot of options for your listening. And I think these nozzles give a lot more different presentation without changing the sound dynamics too much. Not to say that the tuning nozzles on the EA500LM do that, but they're a more drastic change, where this is kind of keeps things more the same and just changes the treble energy and changes whether or not it's kind of a more laid back and smooth with the standard silver nozzle, or a little bit more airy and layered with a little bit more dynamism that you would get with the gold Angel Ears nozzle. In terms of musicality, as you know, I like to kind of give like a one song rundown and kind of break that one song down. So if you want to take your IEM and you really want to listen to that same piece of music over and over again, you can kind of compare what I have laid out here with these IEMs and really give you a decent starting point from where to kind of compare and contrast. For today's song, I chose Giorgio by Marauder by Daft Punk off of the Random Access Memories album. And more specifically, I chose the section of the song between the 4-minute and 7-minute mark. And inside that 4 to 7 minutes, there's quite a lot of different varied music styles. There is a big orchestral swell, there's some spoken word sections, there is some kind of that French touch synth, there's some disco music, there's a little bit of kind of swing music in there. It kind of runs the full gamut of genres in that one small little 3-minute section, and there's a lot of dynamism that happens in there between the organ playing and the orchestral swell, and each one of these presents that song in a different kind of tonal range. And so I thought it was really, really cool to kind of pick and choose and separate between these ones here. Starting with the EA500LM on that song, There was a lot of detail in the highs. The synth and the organ had a lot of grit to them and had quite a bit of bite and felt really good. I mostly listen to my EA500 LMs using the gold nozzle, which I can show you here real quick. I use the gold nozzle on these. My secondary favorite nozzle is the silver nozzle with the red band, which according to Simgot is kind of the Harman 2019 preferred curve. But I still prefer these with the gold. The thing about the A500 LM on these is that there were some portions where they did seem like they're kind of getting a little too distorted, and with the organ breakdown that it had, some of the distortions at the end of that little clip did cause it to have a little bit of harshness to it. Stereo separation and kind of the 3D nature of the song was really well maintained. When it came to the big orchestral swell, which is kind of at the 6-minute mark to about 6 minutes and 30 seconds, I did find that the detail did fall off on these. It was still able to reproduce the sound, but what I found was that it seemed to take the sound and almost make it flat. It's like there's just like this tonal wall that kind of got created by it. It wasn't bad. I wouldn't say that it like ruined the sound, but it made it feel a lot less detailed than it should have. And I tried trying some different tips. I tried running a different cable. I tried, maybe it was 3.5 instead of 4.4 millimeter. I kind of tried to change it up a little bit to see if I could maybe get that sound that I was not getting to come back, or maybe cause some of like the flatness to go away, and I just couldn't. No matter what I did, it just kind of never really picked up in that particular section. Now, the spoken word section on the EA500 LM was by far and away the best. There was a great sense of, there's kind of like a little bit of reverb when Giorgio is talking, and that reverb really came out and really gave this like grand hall kind of feeling, like he was really inside of a big music hall saying what he was saying, and that I think was kind of the way that was intended to be mixed, and this really did reproduce that quite well. And I think that section of the song was best represented by the EA500 LM. I did retest this with the silver nozzle with the red ring, and I did find that it did provide a little bit better separation during the orchestral swell, and it did kind of break things up a little bit and to give a little bit more spice to it. But I also found that it did sacrifice a little bit of tonality and a little bit of the timbre of the set, and kind of made it sound a little unnatural in parts. So I wasn't as thrilled by that nozzle. That said, everybody's ears are different. Your mileage may vary with different nozzles on it. I don't think there's any one of these you can pick that's really wrong, but that was my impression with the EA500. With the Tangzu Fudu, the Fudu, immediately there was way more bass than there was with the 500 LM, maybe even a little too much bass. It almost felt kind of boomy at times, but not in a bad way. It was just the bass was a little overemphasized. One thing that did really surprise me was when I got to the organ breakdown in the song, it was so much clearer than it was on the 500 LM, where the 500 LM kind of had some distortion to it and made it feel more distorted, and made it feel very what's the word I'm looking for? It did not come out sounding like I think it was supposed to. It kind of sounded very just harsh. The organ actually sounded really clear on these. I think it has a lot of that to do with the BAs, and that's kind of going to be a theme with these, is it's the BAs, because when it came to the orchestral swell, on this was by far and away the best on the Fudu. Where the bass was really boomy on the other sections of the song, inside the orchestral swell, that extra bass like really added to the volume of it. It added to the ambiance. It added to the thickness of the note weight for it, and really gave a lot of those overtones some actual body to kind of feel like oh my gosh, that's really something special is happening here. And with the BAs in there, it really gave really great instrumentation separation, and everything was very distinctive. It was very easy to pick out which instruments were where, and the 3D panning and swirling you kind of got during that swell was well maintained. That being said, I did find that it felt a little busy. It felt a little rushed. I don't know really other way to say it other than like, my ears were kind of feeling like, okay, this is almost too much information, and it became a little overwhelming. That said, though, it was not fatiguing in any way, and I did not feel that there was a harshness to this like I was getting on the 500 LM. In certain situations, this was much easier to listen to. And so despite that kind of darker tuning, warmer tuning that this has, that detail came out really well because of the BAs being there. Where this did fall flat was in the spoken word section. The spoken word section sounded like he was inside of a concrete hall, like a hallway, not like a hall, like a music hall, but like just a hallway, like a service hallway. It was very tonally dead, and it didn't have a lot of reverb to it. And I think that might be maybe because the BAs were maybe a little too fast, and it lost that weightiness that the echo of the vocal had. But overall, it was a very good showing. And again, between these three, you can't really go wrong. That being said, I do think that out of these, the Delci AE is still kind of the Goldilocks set of the three. Even though there was less bass on this than there was with the Delci, and I mean, even in some cases, I felt like this had a little bit less bass than the 500 LM. The overall tonality of the bass seemed to be a lot more natural, and the details in the synth and in the organ were much better in terms of how they were represented here. The interesting thing about the organ is that the organ is it's the distortion in the organ is coming from the organ itself. It is a sound profile in the organ that is creating the distortion on it. And the way that it sounded on the LM and the Fudu was as if that was like a post-production addition to the organ track. This sounded like, oh yes, that is the sound coming from the organ, not the mic pickup over distorting or an engineer adding a digital signal processing to it or something like that. That it was actually the organ producing that sound. It was very, very natural, and it fit into the soundstage very, very well. And that was the one thing that I think I can't overemphasize enough, is that this soundstage and layering of the gold nozzle on the Delci AE is absolutely phenomenal. It is really, really well done in the way that it works. When it came time to come to the orchestral swell, it was very good detail in the way that it was produced. There's not quite as much detail as you got from the Fudu with the BAs, but the layering and the separation and the staging that you got of each instrument kind of following into its own place on the rostrum, if you will, of the orchestra, it really gave that separation and that openness that you would get and that you want from a song when you're listening to it. It has a big swell like that. It really felt very, very good. And unlike where I felt like this was, gave me that kind of rushed feeling listening to this, like there was a sense of urgency to the music, or this kind of sounded a little bit harsh, this almost was laid back. It was very, very laid back. It was like, it was enjoyable to listen to. It was kind of like, kind of this gentle kind of presentation to it, where this, like I said, it just felt rushed. This was very smooth. It was very, very smooth, very, very controlled. And even though it did not have the detail that you got from this, because the layering and separation was the way that it was on here, it just felt more natural and more lifelike and more cohesive. And I found myself being much more impressed by this than I did by either this or this. Now, that being said, it's not that any of these are a bad choice. I think all three of these are an excellent choice. It just depends on what you want. Whether you want warm, whether you want bright, or whether you want something that's in the middle that can kind of lean a little bit to either direction without going the other way. Speaking of leaning a little bit warmer, I did listen to the same song with the stock silver nozzle, and it did improve the bass response a little bit, and it did make everything kind of feel a little bit tighter in the low end than the gold nozzle did. But it did kind of suffer in the treble range. It did lose a lot of that airiness. It did lose a lot of that 3D quality that you got from the Angel Ears nozzle. And it did ultimately kind of take away a little bit from it. It wasn't bad, just it did not have the same level of detail. I think that's kind of the speciality that this has, is that this this direct or this DD driver sounds better than this DD driver does in terms of overall quality. I can hear this being rushed as a DD driver. There are sometimes I listen to this and I think it's a hybrid, like the Fudu. It's very capable of reproducing good bass and still reproducing vocal without the vocal being overwhelmed by the bass, which sometimes happens on the 500 LM on certain songs. And it's something that doesn't happen on the Fudu because, of course, it's a hybrid and those two frequencies are being produced by separate drivers. So the ability for this to maintain its tonality and provide that really accurate reproduction across the entire frequency range is really something special. And then to add that layering and that soundstage to it, it's just great, and it's why, like I said, this is now my official pick in the sub $100 category. I much prefer this over pretty much anything else that's out there. So let's take a little bit of a deeper look here, and let's move on to taking a look at some graphs. And again, a huge shout out to Paul Wasabi for not giving me permission to use his graphs, but allowing me to use them anyway, because I, again, am not cool enough to be able to have my own coupler. So we'll just kind of look now at the silver and the gold nozzles here, and you can see the primary differences between the stock tuning, which is going to be the blue line, and then the gold line, which is of course the gold nozzle. And you can immediately see that there is this increase here in the upper mids going into the treble. There's a big push between 2 and 3K. This dip between 3 and 6K here, this really cuts a lot of the sibilance out of the vocal and really reduces a lot of the potential like hissing and essing that you can get from certain songs. There is a little bit that can creep up into this area here between this 5 to 6K region, but this is adding a lot of that airiness and a lot of that kind of 3D effect to a lot of things. That's where a lot of this extra energy is coming from. And then of course you can see this does roll off the treble fairly well, and there's really not a whole heck of a lot of difference in the treble here, but these two spikes in particular, this gives all the soundstage, this gives all the note weight to the male vocals, this gives good percussion sound, this gives a lot of that airiness to cymbals and things, and it's really quite impressive in my opinion what they've been able to do with that tuning nozzle. If we look at the stock tuning compared to the OG Delci, again, like I said at the beginning of the video, the Angel Ears is a slightly improved tuning over the OG Delci. You can see that it has a little bit more bass presence to it. And through this mid-range, even though it's sacrificing a little bit from this kind of 3 to 5K range in here, it's also more evenly representing between the 5 to 8K region. So tonally, it's more accurate through here. I think that this little dip that they do at 6K kind of adds a little bit more presence to the soundstage on the OG Delci, and this reduction past 10K certainly makes it feel a little bit warmer and a little bit more kind of dark in its tuning. But I don't think that the boost that the silver nozzle from the Angel Ears gives is it detracts from that warmer tonality, or the slight lacking of soundstage compared to the OG Delci is enough to disregard the Angel Ears stock tuning. I think it's really quite good for what it is, and I think that if you do have the stock Delci, I do think that the Angel Ears is a reasonable upgrade if you can find it when it's on sale. Maybe I think it is a worthy upgrade to get, and I think that overall the tonality is a little bit better for it. So going on from this, I think the one thing I want to point out here is that all my reference listening that I do is based on running the gold nozzle. Even though the silver nozzle is good, the gold nozzle is just better, and so that's what I compared everything to. The first thing I want to talk about is I want to bring up the EW200, and I think it's really important to see just how close the EW200 really matches to the AE. And This is really when I say, like previously, of like, this is what I wanted the EW300 to sound like. This is a prime example of that. I wanted a little bit more bass presence, which the Angel Ears does provide. It's a better quality driver, so it's not going to be as overwhelmed as is the EW200 driver. It's got a little bit of this mid-range push here, so the vocal clarity is going to be a little bit better. This dip provides a little bit less sibilance and vocal range, and then more importantly, this little bit of extra energy between that 5 to 10k or 5 to 8k region does provide that extra kind of 3D holographic effect. But past 10k, you can see we have a significant reduction in the energy on these 2 points here. So I'm getting less treble energy, less sibilance, more detail, more soundstage, more note weight, more controlled bass. And overall, like when you're making that stepping stone from a sub $50 IEM like the EW200 to a sub $100 IEM like the Angel Ears, you want to keep some of that tuning sameness, but you don't necessarily want to keep the same presentation, and this definitely makes the presentation sound more special. So when you're making that jump from a lower IEM to a higher IEM, this makes sense. Whereas I think the jump from the 200 to the 300 from Simgot just did not flow or really was very coherent. If we look at the EW300 in comparison to the Delci AE, we can see the bass response is near enough to might as well be exactly the same. The Delci AE does have a better upper mid-range than the EW300 does. And again, you can see this dip between the 3 to 5K region here. That's kind of where some of the Simgot house tuning resides, and there is some sibilance that can happen in that region from some vocals on the EW300. But overall, you can see how much the tonality comes down, but that 10K peak on the EW300 is still there. And so if you're treble sensitive to that, the Delci AE is going to be a better bet. And for me, it is. There is a little bit more energy here in 8K, which does make this sound a little less dark than the EW300. But again, if we go to the silver nozzle, you can see the silver nozzle immediately kind of clamps that down. You still get this good detail between that 5 and 8K range that feels nice and balanced. So it's still going to feel fairly bright, but you can see again how much more the treble energy rolls off past 10K. So if you still want that darker sound, this is going to get you, at least, like I said, it's not going to take you to like the Fudu EW300 range, but it's going to get you there closer. It's going to lean that direction. And then you have the option for a much brighter IEM with more detail and more 3D soundstage should you want it. And overall, I think just in terms of overall tonality and musicality and cohesiveness, I think the Angel Ears Delci is better than the EW300. It just sounds better to me. I know I've taken some flack for saying the EW300 is not a great IEM, but it's not great to me. And if you have an EW300 and you love it, continue to love it, and don't take my word for anything. It doesn't mean anything for what your ears hear and what you enjoy. If we put the Fudu on here, we can see that the Fudu tracks very, very well to the silver nozzle. And if we look at the gold nozzle on here, we can see that the Fudu's upper mid gain that we see here, this slope matches perfectly with it. The Delci AE with the gold nozzle just takes it that little bit further and adds that extra note weight to it. We can see that they're both fairly rolled off through here. They both have a dip, which this dip here at 6K is also present on the EW300. You do see this. You see this on some other sets as well, where they dip it right here at 6K. And that this hump in 6K, I think, is where a lot of that layering and a lot of that really cool 3D effect gets put through with some of the harmonics that happen as a result of that. And again, we can see where the Fudu gets really, really dark past 10K with the big roll off. But even though we're losing that treble energy, we're not losing some of that clarity, because again, it's being propped up by those BAs, and so that BAs pull a lot of this back. So again, I think that this is they're comparable in many ways, more so than you may originally think. And of course, we can also see on here that the Fudu does have this little bit more bass rise through here. It does kind of roll off a little bit in the sub bass past 30 hertz, but your ear doesn't really hear that. And the Delci doesn't seem to really like, even though it measures high, it seems like it's more kind of like this. It kind of falls off a little bit past about 40 hertz for some strange reason. Whether it's on the silver nozzle or the gold nozzle, it doesn't really have that super deep, high impactful bass. But I think it actually sounds better for that as a result of it. So you can see that there. In comparison to running with the EA 500 LM with the gold nozzle, you can see again why I like the gold nozzle, because the gold nozzle does follow fairly well the tuning of the Delci AE with the gold nozzle. You can see that it is very similar to the way that the rise is done, but of course there is a little bit more energy in this mid rise here that does allow for it to again produce a little bit more note weight. And because this cuts out through here through this 4K range, you don't get kind of any honky sounding vocals, and you don't get any sibilance that might happen in here in that kind of 4 to 5K vocal range. So overall, I think on tonality, I think that the AE just comes off sounding a little bit more cohesive. There are a couple of songs where you do end up noticing some very recessed vocals. If you're doing comparative listening back and forth between the 500 LM here with the gold nozzle and the Delci AE with the gold nozzle, you will notice in this region that there are some songs with some vocals that will be recessed. One song in particular that I noticed that very much on was the Arctic Monkeys' Do I Want to Know. The vocal was very recessed on the Delci and was kind of pulled back from the soundstage, whereas on the EA 500 LM, the vocal was absolutely front and center and forward. The percussion was way more forward. The guitar had a little bit more color to it and kind of fit into the mix a little bit more, whereas the Delci seemed to have a more of a subdued presentation to it, almost kind of dark, and in some ways it almost sounded like the Fudu when you had listened to it, and it's just because of the way the song is mixed, the tonal range of the singer, that's one of those things. But like in the exact opposite of that, you would have for example, the Revivalists, I Wish I Knew, are almost the exact opposite of the Arctic Monkeys, where the EA 500 makes the vocal feel recessed and pushes the guitar forward. The Delci brings the vocal forward and kind of pushes the guitar backwards. And the ultimate instrument separation on the Delci was significantly better, and the percussion of the bongos in particular was a lot more layered and felt like it was part of the track rather than just kind of being a noise in the background. Whereas the A500 in a couple of spots in that song started to feel very flat and kind of lose some of its soundstage, even though the stereo separation was a bit wider. Just overall it felt less enveloping and in the music. So generally speaking, you're going to get different sounds with the different IEMs, and that's something you just kind of have to be used to doing as you expand your collection and as you test different things. But overall, like I said, if you're, let's say you're going from something like, the 7 hertz, the OG 0, you can see how well that tracks and trends, and then maybe let's say from there you go up from the 0 to the EW200. You can see the 0 and the EW200. Well, now you're getting more bass, you're getting a little bit more treble energy. It sounds great. Now you want to step up to a sub $100 IEM. Now you're going to a better quality driver that has better dynamics, better nuance to it, is able to extract more detail, be less influenced by sub bass and mid bass frequencies. Then you move up to the angel ears, and from the angel ears, if you want to go from there, maybe you want to go a little bit darker and go with something like an MP145, or maybe you want to go a little bit brighter and go with something like an S12 Pro or something like that. Going from one IEM to another has to make sense in some way, and I think that as far as the sub $100 category goes, even though none of these IEMs are a bad choice at all, I just think that the Delci is, again, that kind of Goldilocks mid runner that just kind of does everything well. And I think the two tuning nozzle options kind of slotting perfectly in between the darker Fudu and the brighter EA 500 LM gives you a lot of great option. So, yeah, so that's kind of my review of the Kefine Delci AE. It is my new under $100 recommendation. I think it is a fantastic IEM. It is what I wanted the EW300 to be from the get-go. Great cable, great all-metal build quality, fantastic comfort. Comes with a 4.4 millimeter cable that you'll never need to replace. Responds well to tip rolling. Has a lot of good things going for it to really dial in and figure out what your sound signature is. So yeah, if you ever see this come on sale for less than the $75 to $80 that it's normally being sold at, absolutely pick it up. I think you will not be disappointed with it at all. I think it fits pretty much every genre of music you could possibly want it to with both of those tuning nozzles. So hopefully that has been informative for you and given you some good information. If you have any questions about anything, please don't hesitate to put it down into the comment section below or post into the Reddit thread where I'm going to be putting a link to this video on, and hopefully I'll be putting out another one of these again real soon with whatever the next new flavor of the IEM FOMO of the month is. All right, you guys take care. Thanks again for watching all the way through this. I appreciate your viewership, appreciate your commentary, your interaction, and we'll see you again on the next one. Bye-bye.